Welcome to The Rest is Politics emergency podcast on the day that Rishi Sunak finally gets round to calling a general election with me, Alastair Campbell.
And me, Rory, Stewart, and Alastair. We just spent most of the morning together. We were up in Leeds together last night.
We were in Leeds and we
were
were on a train.
getting into the details of local council arrangements and
Yeah.
devolution and all the gritty business of devolved budgets. And suddenly we got an election.
Well, suddenly on the train, Rory, if you remember, sitting next to a dentist called Jessica and her dad who was going to see a play, going to see Fawlty Towers, I was able to pass on to them these rumours swirling around. And you said, I will bet anybody £50 he's not calling an election today. Why were you so confident?
Because it is complete insanity. I mean, it makes zero sense. I mean, there's just no way that this makes any sense at all. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, if he thinks that this is about the economy, then actually, if he gave it a few more months, there's a chance, decent chance actually, that the economy might strengthen a little bit. Inflation might come down a bit. Interest rates might come down a bit. He might, although it's probably unlikely, be able to get some of his stuff done on his Rwandan flights. And who knows, when you're 20 points behind in the polls, there's absolutely no point going to an election straight away. You may as well wait and see, just in case by some miracle, Keir Starmer or Rachel Reeves slipped over on a banana skin, however unlikely it was. But he's going to a certain defeat now in 6 weeks, whereas he could at least have gambled, held off a bit to see whether some miracle might have improved things slightly and had another few more months in office.
Yeah. I mean, I look, the last time there was these sort of rumours going around he was about to call an election, which at the time I said I thought was a gigantic betting scam by somebody. But I think we said at that time the only thing he has left really is the element of surprise. He has taken people by surprise. Now,
I didn't get the surprise. You said that to me.
Well, I'll tell you.
Explain it to me, because I mean, surprise! I'm 20 points behind 9 holes, and I'm going to lose the election. Surprise!
No, wait a minute. The surprise is that you have a moment at the start where you can kind of frame things. The problem is, I don't think he framed it very well just now. But if you're, let's try and go. So I can remember various points at which we were deciding. In opposition, you're panicking the whole time about when they're going to call the election. And John Major in 1970, he did go long and he waited and he sort of hoped something turned up. And then he went for a very long campaign, which is exactly what Rishi Sunak is doing. And then I think they're both, the other thing that Sunak's doing today, he really was putting up in lights the sense of, oh, I've got this amazing record and didn't I do well during furlough, and look at the economy is picking up, and trying to con people into thinking that because inflation's falling, it means prices are falling, the cost of living is falling when it's not. And then the other thing he did was really try to sort of, is essentially say, this is now a choice between me and Keir Starmer for Prime Minister, and going at Keir Starmer on character, and I'm just not sure that's going to work. So I think the framing is not good. I could have framed it better for him today, but I'm not going to say how I would have done it.
We'll come back to the framing, actually, because I think that is a good point. I mean, if you were right that this is about surprise, then you better have something pretty remarkable up your sleeve rather than just standing up and saying everything that you've been saying for the last few weeks. And nothing very surprising in what he said. I think the other thing is that if we look at those polls, the great Rest is Politics polls that we've been doing exclusively every month, there was some quite interesting, very small changes which seemed to be softening a little bit in his direction, which, again, not guaranteed at all, but if he'd given it another few weeks and months, there's just about a chance, not that he'd win the election. I never believed he could win the election, but he could have slightly minimized the damage. I've obviously, as you can imagine, have had a number of texts and WhatsApps from serving MPs. So I think I've heard from 6 of them. Some of them being cabinet ministers, some backbenchers, some of the select
will they all stay?
I think very few of them will stay. Very few of them will stay, including
Seriously,
some.
they'll throw the towel in.
Yep, including some who haven't yet announced they're leaving will leave.
Wow.
And honestly, the response from most of them is total bewilderment. I mean, literally, they're writing back going, oh, I'll give you a sort of sample. One of them's like, I have literally no idea. why he's doing it any more than I have any idea why he's standing in the rain with his musical background. Another one wrote saying,
Can I just say for our listeners, in case they didn't hear, the musical background was a well-known anthem from 1997 called Things Can Only Get Better. So there's Rishi Sunak standing in a very wet day, and at the bottom of Downing Street, you can hear the anthem that was part of Labour's victory in 1997. Now, I've got to say as well, I got a message from somebody who used to be part of our team, Kate Garvey, and she just said, bloody hell, Jen, at least we'd have sorted the weather. I think that was the other thing. So yeah, so your friends in the Tory party are basically I'm trying to be level-headed.
I'm talking to literally veteran MPs, you know, people who've been in
point to this
15, 20 years, and they're just writing back. When I say, have you got any idea what he's doing this? And almost all of them are writing back saying, no, to be honest, I've got no idea. And then they try to speculate. And I can give you the full range of hypotheses, right? So this is the best moment to go. So this is the very generous view, right? So this is a good moment. Inflation's down, interest rates cuts, and there are going to be Rwandan flights in June. So that's the story. This is a beautiful moment to go. Yeah. That's really not very convincing. That's somebody just putting that out, trying his best. The next theory was things are definitely not going to improve. So the economy is not going to get any better, and there's not going to be any more money for cuts. So you might as well go now.
Yeah.
The third theory was things are going to get much worse
between now and say November.
Yeah. So we might as well go now. So that theory is Rwanda's going to go bottoms up.
Yeah.
There's going to be more defections. Farage is going to make a comeback. The party conference is going to be an absolute catastrophe.
Mm.
Then there was a number of people who are just like, honestly, I suspect he just hates being PM and can't bear the idea of a winter campaign and just can't face the idea of waiting till party conference and just
he could be in California
and just can't do it anymore.
But you think these are people who are going to announce, presumably very, very soon, will have to tell their local parties if they're standing or not.
Absolutely.
And then you're going to have a whole new batch of candidates.
One of them's confirmed to me that he's standing again. They're not all going, but a very remarkable number are leaving.
Yeah.
And they are all totally thrown off balance and astonished. So there is only one more theory that I want to share, and then I'll shut up about it, which is that I did have somebody who's very much in the inner circle who said that there have been a lot of MPs over the last few months going in to see him saying, please, can we have an election? We're so exhausted. We're so fed up. We don't want to be in Parliament anymore. We want to leave. We want to go and do something else with our lives. So it may be that there's been a bit of pressure from MPs just saying, this is just rubbish. We can't take it anymore. Let's just get out. And
you see, the other thing I think is odd, if that's the sort of mood, which is totally defeatist. You can't go into a campaign with a defeatist attitude, so you might as well go. He's going now, whether he likes it or not, into what will be 6 of the most exhausting weeks of his life. Campaigns, especially for the leaders, are truly horrible experiences. They are exhausting. You are under massive scrutiny. The pressures are relentless and at times unbearable. And I just think if that's the mood, why have such a long campaign? Why go long? And I just wonder whether there's anything that's thought through in this, or whether he, and I know you laughed when I said it, but in a way, it is the only thing he had left was this: I'm going to take them all by surprise. Now,
can I just on that one, because I think that's a really interesting one. I do think that there's a risk in politics that leaders get into a mindset where they think that they are going to do something surprising to, inverted commas, show strength. It's what I call the Humza Yusuf move. They do these completely bewildering things because they think it somehow makes them look strong, because at least they're taking initiative. I mean, I suppose what they feel is, I'm trapped. At least in this case, I'm taking a choice. I'm not having something forced on them. But usually it's a bad sign. It was a bad sign with Humza Yusuf, and I'm afraid it's a bad sign with Rishi Sunak.
Yeah, we should let people know this event that we were at in Leeds today was very interesting, because it was full of people from the housing sector, from property, from local government, lots of economists and so forth. And we did our usual thing of asking them who they thought would be Prime Minister after the next election. Little did we know at the time that it would be in no time at all. And it was 100% said Keir Starmer will be the Prime Minister. But then they'd had Angela Rayner there yesterday, and we asked them whether they felt that they could be part of the delivery of these new towns that she was talking about in this massive house building programme before the end of the next Parliament. And they weren't really buying it in a way. And I think that what the Tories will try to do now, and of course they've got the help of newspapers that, sorry, that's my phone. They've got the help of newspapers that they're going to be absolutely vile about Labour from tomorrow, even more vile than usual. They're going to try to make this a scary choice about Labour. And I just think that's a very difficult thing to do, because what that audience was saying, indicating to us today, yeah, well, we might not be totally clear about what Labour are going to do, but we don't mind it. There's got to be a change. And I'll tell you something I thought was very interesting. When we were on the train, you were busy tapping away at your laptop, and I was watching PMQs, and then belatedly you were. I thought it was because, let's be honest, Sunak obviously knew when he woke up today that he was going to do this today. I can't believe he just sort of thought it up, Ellis, and that's when the rumours started.
And remember, there was a question by Stephen Flynn where Stephen Flynn said, "Are you going to call an election? Are you feared?"
No, you feared, aye. But so he knew that was happening,
and his response actually was surprisingly disingenuous, given we know what he was about to do.
Well, he said, there's
going to some time in the second half or end of this year there will be an election I can reveal to you. Yeah.
But what I thought was very smart about bearing in mind that they're going to try to make this about Labour being scary, I thought was very smart. Sunak, at the first possible opportunity, trotted out his economic. He got a planted question from a guy we talked about in the podcast, Elliot Colburn, about the economy, about the inflation figures. And then he was setting himself up for a big fight with Keir Starmer on the economy, which Labour want to fight on, okay, but not today. And what Keir Starmer did, which I thought was very, very effective and smart, he started with a very long and fulsome tribute to Craig McKinley, the Tory MP who's had this horrible illness and was back in the Commons today. He then mentioned people in the gallery who had been involved in the Manchester Arena bombing. And then he went on to 6 questions about the infected blood scandal, which were very, very pointed and sharp and so forth. But what he was, I think, deliberately doing was not allowing, in that context, Sunak. I think by then, Keir Starmer, the Labour Party did get a tip-off that Sunak was going to be having what they call the lectern moment at 5 o'clock. So I think that's why the rumours all started. But Keir was not going to give him that moment there. Be interesting to see. I don't know whether it'll happen while we're doing this.
I think there's also a real problem, which is the best case that the Conservatives can make going into the election to minimise damage is to say, actually, the economy is beginning to turn around. And some of the people will know inflation down 2.5%. It's coming down.
Mm-hmm.
Interest rates will probably come down, and growth is beginning to take off a bit. But if that's your message, and you're saying stick with nurse for fear of something worse, then the logic is to run the election in November. The logic is to give it 6 months to prove that the economy is beginning to turn around and going in a slightly more positive direction. I mean, even if all you're trying to do is save the Conservative Party for posterity, because you want to be able to say that to the narrative to be, we handed over to Labour an economy that was beginning to recover. And you might have been able to achieve that if you delayed till November. You can't go confidently into an election now saying, actually, we've turned the corner, the economy's recovering, stick with the nurse for something worse, if you've only got 1 week's worth of data on which to make that kind of case. I mean, it makes it look as though you have no confidence at all that things are going to improve over the next 5 to 6 months, doesn't it?
Yeah. What about, I don't suppose Jeremy Hunt's amongst one of the 6 that's texting you, is he? Because his position is going to be very, very interesting.
No, he's not. It's not.
Gerald Davidson says he loves it that Rory is on his phone getting messages from astounded Tory MPs, no doubt. I've just had I'm going to give an award here to the most opportunist, the fastest, most opportunist request coming in. Is from Torquil Crichton, who is a Labour candidate in the Western Isles. And he's basically saying, game on, please come to the islands in the next couple of months. So I think that's brilliant. But that's the other thing for candidates today. This is like, I think it's important to emphasize to people, general elections they're obviously huge moments in the life of the nation. Even people who don't follow politics that closely know that, we know when general elections were in the past, we know the ones that were important. But this is now, you've got all over the country tonight, you've got candidates, you've got people who still want to be candidates, you've got organisers, you've got volunteers, you've got people cancelling holidays. And this is the other thing which I think will piss off a lot of your former friends. The indications they've all been
my current friends, my former colleagues is the phrase.
Your former colleagues, sorry, your current friends, yeah. But they've all been the indications they've been given is that, it's not going to be during the Euros, it's not going to be during the summer. Off you go on holiday if you want to have a holiday. And now they're all going to have to be campaigning. There's also the issue of school times.
Yep.
Scottish schools, Northern Ireland schools have different summer holiday dates to English schools. I think, can I put my first of many pitches in to remind people that this will be the first general election at which voter ID will be required. And I think that is really, really important that people remember that. I think this will be the first general election in which I suspect there will be a lot more tactical voting than usual, because I think despite what Sunak was trying to do today, I think the driving narrative of this election is time for a change. I think that's the big. I think people, we felt that today. We felt that.
No, we totally felt it today.
Well.
And actually, the reason, of course, he's going to go a bit long is he's hoping that by going a bit longer, he's going to be able to expose Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves to a bit more public scrutiny. So now you'll disagree with this because obviously you're very sympathetic towards Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves, but the Tory position is that the Labour front bench isn't that exciting, isn't that impressive, and that actually when the public look at them closely, they're not going to be that impressed, and that the public's basic view is they're fed up with the Tories. They want to try someone else. But the Tories are gambling that with a long campaign, they can make people look carefully at some of the key Labour figures and be like, I'm not really convinced these people are going to be able to run that great a government. So that's what I think they're hoping.
Yeah, they are. But I think that, so look, why don't we just let the listeners in on it? We did an interview this week with Rachel Reeves for Rest is Politics Leading, which we'll put out in the next period. And the point is, I just think that, you and I both complain sometimes that Labour may be a bit too cautious. But if the Tories are banking everything on Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves dropping the ball, I just don't think they're going to be satisfied in that way. There will be, by the way, this is the other thing people should remember about elections, there will be totally unexpected moments that nobody sees coming. There will be issues that suddenly flare up that you didn't expect to flare up. But I suspect, because of the mood around the parties, that they're just as likely to be involving the Tory party as any of the other parties.
Yeah. I mean, just to remind people, remind listeners how that can happen during elections. And you maybe can just think about a couple of examples of ways in which your elections, suddenly horrible things happened in the run up to the elections in those 5-6 weeks, which you really thought, oh my goodness, this is going to derail. There was the John Prescott punch. There was the Gordon Brown moment, with the bigot. There was Theresa May, where basically, having been 20 points ahead on the polls, looking like she was going to crush Jeremy Corbyn, her manifesto went horribly wrong, and her announcement on adult social care was branded as a death tax, and she found her support going to free fall 3 weeks before the 3 weeks before the vote.
And that's why that discipline that Rachel, I think somewhat to your irritation at times, but that sort of discipline that Rachel Reeves was showing in our interview, I think will be so important. But there will be moments, there's no doubt there will be moments where I can remember, going way back to when there was the Tories produced. This is when Margaret Thatcher was Prime Minister. Labour did a shadow budget, and the Tories just managed to take it apart through the campaign. You've got to have, ultimately, even though campaigns have changed a lot, I doubt that we're ever going to see the return of daily press conferences. I don't know how many TV debates there might be. I think a lot of it will be fought on social media, and will be fought in sort of, them trying to control the message the whole time. But I think that I think that from Sunak's perspective, he's got to go into this thinking he can win. I think it would be. I can't think of a worse form of human existence of fighting a general election as the incumbent when in your heart you're going to lose. He's got to tell himself he can win. The people around him have got to believe that. And so I think from Labour's perspective, there's got to be they've got to. Sorry, my phone keeps going. From Labour's perspective, they should also be fighting it like they can lose it.
Now, this is Adam Barton question just come in. Will Labour now be able to give more details on their plans? So far, it's been very low on detail and focusing on not being Tories, presumably to protect the manifesto. So Adam Barton's hope is that one of the reasons they've been holding things back is for fear that the Tories will nick their ideas. Do you think we're likely now to see a kind of bold and exciting manifesto or not?
I think there will be more detail, but I think the contours are pretty clear now. I think a combination of the missions and the 6 pledges that Keir Starmer set out, was it last week now? I think that will form the basis of it. I hope there will be more. I hope there will be both more in terms of detail and in terms of what I call, big picture. So, for example, I mentioned earlier, we were talking about the new towns that Angela Rayner talked about yesterday. They are going to have at some point to explain how that works, how it ties in with the infrastructure that lots of people at that conference today were talking about. If you have a new town, how many new schools, how many new GP surgeries, how does that all get fitted with the transport system? That sort of detail. I think and I actually think what Labour should take confidence in is they have got the building blocks. So if you take the GB energy thing, actually to have a day or several days during the campaign where they put out detail that people end up having a debate about, that is a good thing to do. Because what Labour has to do now is give people the reasons that they say, it's not just that I want the Tories out, I'm voting for Labour because A, B, C, D, E, F, as far as you like. And that's what Labour has to use the campaign for.
Just remind people what the 6 first steps are. They are stick to tough spending rules in order to deliver economic stability.
Yep.
So that's a sort of slightly,
that's really
that's really important, but it's sort of slightly negative. It's like we're not going to do anything that they're not doing on spending. Yeah. Set up Great British Energy, which is some sort of publicly owned clean power energy company. It's a bit kind of. I think that will confuse people a bit. Cut NHS waiting lists by providing 40,000 more appointments each week. Again, I don't know what the general public makes of that. I don't know how many appointments we think we have each week. Whether 40,000 more appointments is a huge number.
It's in the millions. It's in the. I think more than over 1 million a day.
I see. Okay, so may not make. Yeah.
Launch
border security command to stop the gangs arranging small boat crossings.
It's neutralising the small boats attacks. Yeah.
Providing more neighbourhood police officers, but he just says more, it doesn't give a number, to reduce antisocial behaviour and introduce new penalties for offenders.
Yep.
And then finally, recruiting 6,500 teachers. So I guess the teachers thing is good, I guess, but it's not that exciting. And of course, a lot of this doesn't apply to Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
But one of the things we talked about at the conference today was that people have to get used to the fact that in devolution you have these different dynamics going on. So several of those don't apply to Scotland. But I think that I think that if you go back to 1997 and the pledge card that we had, it was they weren't massive. We weren't saying change the world. We weren't saying everything's going to get better overnight. And I think what Labour have a judgment to make now through this campaign, which, by the way, is going to feel a lot longer than 6 weeks. It just will. That today's going to be a big day. There'll be lots of big days through it. The TV debates will be big. The manifesto launches will be big. But there's going to be so much airspace is going to be devoted to this election. And part of the battle during the campaign is who is in control of the national conversation, and that is also setting the mood and the morale of the people who are out knocking on doors and are out campaigning in the towns and villages around the country. And I think Labour thus far has so benefited from the sense of Tory chaos, of the leadership stuff. I'm assuming that none of these colleagues that are messaging you are going to do what some of them were talking about earlier, which is to get in letters of no confidence in him if he's doing this, because that's just chaos from the start. So he's there now. He's going to be there, and the battle for the narrative is going to be what frames the campaign. That's why I'd be very keen if and when Keir Starmer, I don't know if he's done a statement yet, but that I think will be about the three things you've got to do in a campaign: your own record, your attack on your opponents, and your plans for the future. Now, Keir Starmer's record in terms of Labour, he's only been an MP for 8 years, is that he's been a big rising star, he's become the leader, and he's changed the Labour Party after Corbyn. That's a pretty good message for the country. His message on the Tories is that there's not a single thing in the country that's got better. They've been a terrible government, time for a change. And then the third bit is the thing that I think we need to hear an awful lot of, not just the sort of the slogans, but actually the detail then of how they're going to make those things work.
Yeah, and I think there's a pompous for a second. I think it's the democratic point too, isn't it? That people, when they vote, need to know what they're voting for. I mean, it's a basic thing in a democracy. You can't actually just say, "Trust me, we'll be better than the last lot." People want something to see and vote on. Listen, I think you're doing yourselves down a bit though in 97. I mean, we just interviewed David Blunkett, and I'm really looking forward to people listening to that. And he reminded us that you went into that election with a pledge to get 250,000 people off benefits or back into work.
The new deal, yeah.
And that was a big thing, and it was something that he got straight on with.
But for example, I remember one of our pledges was just smaller class sizes.
Yeah, that's right. Getting to under 30, wasn't it?
Yeah, paid for by taking away the assisted places scheme. I've just seen Keir has been out saying what he's planning to say. So if the Conservatives get another 5 years, they'll be entitled to carry on exactly as they are. Nothing will change. A vote for Labour is a vote for stability, and a vote for a politics that treads more lightly and stops the chaos. It's time for change. So they're going for a message of stability, I guess. Let's get serious again, stop the chaos, turn the page, and we can start to rebuild Britain and change our country. So time for a change. Time for a change.
Can we have, guys, anyone listening, let's have some more questions flowing in, please.
I can ask you a question.
Go on then. Gavin Strathern, it's a horrendous timing for the SNP. Currently on 49 seats. I think they'd be happy to hold 20 right now. That's great. Thank you, Gavin. Get an SNP. Anyone else happy to come in?
Well, I was...
Lawrence Dudley, is this time to disrupt the triple election tour? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, go on.
That's a very good question, Lawrence. Well, on that one, but have we actually said that our tour in the autumn is an election tour?
Yeah, we have. Yeah.
Have we?
Yeah, that's but
it's just before the American election, isn't it?
So exactly, it has to be a US election tour. It has to be a general jollity tour, the year of election tour.
Yeah, exactly. So I think
let's just talk about Scotland for a second. Yeah, go on then. So Scotland, look, the SNP, as people will know, are an absolute chaos. Humza Yousaf also made one of these surprising decisions, and I think they're very similar. I've just had a cabinet minister just send me a message saying no idea why he's done this. And it was the same with Humza Yousaf. When I talked to senior people in the SNP, they again had no idea why he thought he'd done it. These are decisions made by tiny circles of people, by leaders trying to show that they're strong and surprising. But boy, the SNP going into an election in a catastrophic situation. Nicola Sturgeon in trouble, her husband under police investigation, Humza Yousaf just stepped down, new leader just in. Absolute chaos and dissension in the ranks. You agree?
Well, I do. I was in Inverness last week, and Kate Forbes, the new Deputy First Minister, who will be one of those people, those candidates now. I mean, she's not a candidate in this election, but the SNP machine will now have to be sort of gearing into action. But I had a chat with her and some of the other SNP and Labour and Lib Dem politicians who were there, and I did sense for the first time, not from Kate, who was obviously talking up their prospects, and it's been tough, but now we can sort of sort things out. John Swinney's going to be serious, etc. But I felt generally within the room and talking to the people I talked to over the couple of days I was up there, that the same it's a different sort of dynamic, but time for a change is very powerful in Scotland as well at the moment. And it'd be interesting to see how often Keir Starmer goes up to Scotland, because
he needs those seats. We've
absolutely
been
there's an awful
again and again. If he can get those seats, he needs a much smaller swing in England.
Correct. So there are a lot of seats up there that are relatively small swings, not tiny, but compared to some of the England seats that he's going after, where it's really, really important he gets them. And it's also important that Scottish people believe that there can be a Labour government in Westminster. I've always felt that is a key to getting people who maybe would vote SNP again at a different election, a Holyrood election. So I think that sense of time for a change is important. There's a question there from Tim. To what extent does Reform's presence in many seats impact on the potential extent of Tory losses? Well,
it's a very good question. So you can look again at the recent polling that we did. The Reform vote seems to be taking roughly equally from Labour and Tory votes, but it looks as though if you
it's more Tory.
In questions of turnout, questions of voter demographic, it's going to have a big impact. And I guess the only thing is that Reform presumably is not going to be able to bring Farage in. So, and again, the polling that we did suggested that Farage leading Reform would add 3 or 4 points to their position.
I'm not convinced of that.
You think they could bring him in before the?
No, I'm not. I think, funny enough, we talked that when you had your headphones in and were tapping away on the train. I was talking to that guy next to me. I just sort of feel that the Farage thing is overblown. I could be wrong. He, by the way, has to, because we keep hearing there are difficulties between him and Richard Tice, but this is the day where Farage has to say yes or no definitively he's going to stand or not. There's absolutely no reason now to hang on. He's enjoyed the teasing game, but today's the day he's got to decide. By the way, I thought it was hysterically funny this morning. Bearing in mind that Ofcom keeps telling us that the reason why GB News is not sort of treated in the same way as the BBC and Sky is because it's not a news programme. Nigel Farage and GB News were asking people to vote for him in the News Presenter of the Year category in the Media Awards. So he's either a news presenter or he's a politician. But, I think if he doesn't sort of get off the fence and do it today, then, I think his credibility takes a hit. George Wildman.
Yeah. And I think we're probably coming to the end, Alastair, unless there's lots more questions coming in. But
I'm enjoying this, Rory.
We need more people to come in with their questions. Come on.
Well, I think we're not seeing all the questions. We're just seeing the ones that our team have decided we should see.
Well, team need to fire through more. George, what do you make on whether he thinks the distraction of the Euros could have an impact on the elections?
Yeah, George Wildman says, did he call the election when he did to have the distraction of the Euros and a positive atmosphere in the country? That always gets said. Around the time of a major tournament. Is often said because they basically said that Labour were helped by the World Cup, and in fact the dates don't even stack up on that one. I do remember in 1996 in the Euros, we did get slightly worried at one point that if England won, that it might help John Major, but I think that stuff's overblown. So the Euros starting. I'm going to the start of the Euros. Well, I suppose we'll have to sort of look at all that stuff now, won't we? But that's going to be in June. So this is going to be in the middle of the Euros. I'm not quite sure where. I think England will be sort of into the the qualifying stage, the sort of knockout stages by then, I guess, as will Scotland, of course. But I don't think that's a big deal. People will make lots of it because the other thing I'm hoping some journalists will watch what we say. I really, really, really hope that within the thousands of hours that are going to get devoted to this election campaign in the next few weeks, that there is more discussion than there usually is about policy. Watching, it was when I got home after we got back from Leeds, I got home just listening to the endless babble of nothingness about who didn't return my calls because of this and all this sort of, and this is now the moment where both the main parties, I think, and the Lib Dems and the SNP and the Greens and the Reform have got to try to get the focus on policy, because I think the desire will be for it to have all about the personality, all about the rubbish, all about the tactical stuff. But the media have got a big responsibility in that.
So we just had a question from Ethan: who will be the next Tory leader? And I think that will be determined by Ethan Pierce, who will be the next Tory leader.
Well, the man on the train thought it should be you, but that's not going to happen, is it?
That's not going to happen because I'm not running in selection. This will all come down to the question of when the Tories lose, whether the right manages to say they lost because they went too far to the left, or whether the left of the party says they lost because they went too far to the right. And they'll both provide different kinds of evidence. So the right of the party will point to votes that were lost to Reform, and the left of the party will point to votes that were lost to Labour and the centre ground. The candidates likely to come out, there doesn't look like there's a strong candidate, sadly, on the centre left of the Conservative Party at the moment who can naturally step up and fill that void. The people who are positioning themselves on Con Home and these kinds of things are people like Kemi Badenoch, Robert Jenrick, Suella Braverman still floating around. There are quite a lot of old-timers who say Priti Patel shouldn't be underestimated. Now, that's quite a sort of grisly group of the sort of Brexit wing. Penny Mordaunt will put her name forward.
How many of those will win? How many of those will win?
So, well, I mean, only one of them. You mean we'll keep their seats?
Yeah.
Well, that's a question. Somebody asked what will be the Portillo moment of this campaign. On the current stats, at 20 points behind, there are going to be seats, very safe seats lost. The Tories could well end up with just over 100 seats. So
that's not going to happen. It's going to close at some point, surely. I mean, if that's the case, then you're going to have lots of Portillo moments. You'll have Jacob Rees-Mogg, you'll have Michael Gove, you'll have
Dominic Raab,
you'll have Braverman, you'll have lots of them.
They'll start flopping. Yeah,
I think Rees-Mogg could be one. I can see the Lib Dems taking that. Yeah, Braverman would be great. That'd be fun. Well, Liz Truss. What about your friend the Independent going against Liz Truss?
Well, that's it. James Bagg in Norfolk. Yeah. Anybody who wants to feel like getting up to Norfolk campaigning, good time to fight for the old independent heart of the Conservative Party. I'd like to put in a bid though for the future Tory leader, for James Cleverly. I think he did well as Foreign Secretary. He's good communicator. He's steady. He's not identified with one wing or other, particularly of the party. He's got a great backstory.
Have you moved away from Gillian Keegan? I mean, you once tipped her for the top, Rory.
I still think Gillian Keegan is a star. I think she's a terrific woman, Gillian Keegan.
What's James Cleverly's majority?
Oh, I don't know.
I'll look it up while you're talking. You carry on.
Yeah, go on. Anyway, the only question though is, has he got a machine? All these people now are going to be moving so fast, and this will distract them from the election because they are assuming Rishi Sunak's going to lose. So they will be desperately trying to build their own election machine,
and that'll become part of a very negative narrative about Sunak as well. Be awful. His majority is 24,673.
That should be holdable. 24,000.
That's pretty big. I mean, if you're losing that, then you're in real trouble.
Katie, do you think Israel-Palestine will be a huge element of this election? Well, it is something that will affect some voters. I do think that we saw with the George Galloway result the big impact that Palestine has had on some voters. We saw it in the local elections where Labour performed badly in seats with over 20% Muslim voters. And I think we'll see it not in terms of people voting Tory, but in terms of people staying home. So it'll create low turnouts. But probably Labour will still safely take those seats. And I think the only thing that could change that is if over the next few weeks, some more horrendous things happened in the Middle East and either of the leaders responded in a particularly inappropriate way.
Yeah, I thought I was reminded today the fact that Rishi Sunak came out with the lectern in Downing Street, and the person on the television was saying, and these lectern moments only happen at moments of major national significance. And I was thinking the last time he did it was because George Galloway won a by-election.
Yeah, we didn't really. I couldn't even remember what it was. It was very odd, that one.
I mean, it was
coming up, I think, to the end, Alastair, with Charlie Richards. Personally, as a Lib Dem leaning voter, I'm disappointed with their current campaign. What should their campaign strategy on a national level be? Teeing up for you very quickly just to explain the conundrum they have. They tend to calculate, and they're doing it again, that what they want to do is win, is not really worried too much about the big national campaign. What they're worrying about is winning these individual seats, running these very, very local campaigns to increase the number of MPs they have in Parliament. But I think it's hugely disappointing. I would have liked to see them take a radical position, for example, on rejoining the European Union Customs Union. Be an obvious thing for them to go on. But go on, tell us about the Lib Dems.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I think you're right. I think they've got a. When we interviewed Ed Davey on Leading, he basically has a list of the seats that he thinks he can win. That's where they're putting their resources in. I think they find it very, very frustrating that Reform just have to sort of put out a sort of dull press release and the media will cover it, whereas they don't get that. So they've sort of almost given up on that, and they're going to focus their resources on a relatively small number of seats, and then take the moments when they get into the national picture when they can. So, for example, if there are TV debates, Ed Davey would be part of that, and that would be a big moment for him. But I think their strategy. I think their strategy is lacking in clarity. And I think actually, we've managed to get through almost 40 minutes now, Rory, without me even mentioning Brexit. But I think it is extraordinary that it is going to be the biggest elephant in the electoral room. Danny Finkelstein had a column in the Times today, essentially saying it is incredible when you think about it. It's one of the most consequential things that has happened in our country in recent years, and none of the parties want to talk about it. It's quite mad when you think about it.
It's heartbreaking. And when you listen
But
to
it's
Rachel,
nuts.
when people listen to Rachel Reed's interview, you can hear us again and again just saying, why won't you talk about this? And her just saying, I don't think anyone wants to talk about it. And we're like, well, no, we do. Lots of people.
Lots of people do. So listen, I'm determined. I've never predicted an election in my life. I won't put a number on it. I've been pretty close on most of them in recent years, the number that I have in my head. But give me your number of a majority. You clearly think Labour will get a majority.
Yeah, I think Labour will get a 69-seat majority.
Okay. That's below what some of your colleagues have been saying to you, isn't it?
No, it is below what they've been saying.
Yeah.
Let's see what I'm right.
It's an absolute pleasure. Started the day with you in Leeds, ended it with you when we started the day, we did not think we'd be talking about a general election by the end of the day.
And as Rishi Sunak would like to say, surprise.
No. What he wants to say, Rory, is the plan is working. And by the way, if there is a Labour government, sack whoever it was at the Treasury who on the Treasury's official account put out a tweet today about the inflation figures saying, stick with the plan is working.
Gone. Stick with
Finished.
the plan, at least for another. Stick with the plan. Oh no, wait a second. I'm calling an election because I don't really want to stick with the plan. In fact, I have no confidence in sticking with the plan for another 6 months.
I want to move on and take my family to California.
No, it's all gone wrong. Anyway,
all right, Rory.
Anyway, thank you all so much for tuning in. The pod will be up in audio form too, and on YouTube for catch up. Question Time and Trip US will be released in due course as usual. Thank you all very much. See you soon.
See you soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.